to do with this park, which can be a real jewel. Point Pleasant Park is available to residents of the city, but the nearest provincial park to Peninsular Halifax is Long Lake Provincial Park. And with careful planning and management, it can be a real jewel. And I'm pleased to say the park is shared between myself and my colleague, the member for Timberley Prospect, and the member for Halifax Atlantic. And together, we are determined to turn this into the jewel that it can be. Appropriate protection, appropriate management is what is needed, and I really commend that issue to the Minister of Natural Resources for his consideration. The third issue that I'd like to talk about, Mr. Speaker, in the short time available to me in this context, is the lessons that we have to learn from what has happened up in the Fairmount subdivision in my constituency. There was a very large, very beautiful, but very contaminated piece of land, the subject of 40 years of indiscriminate dumping of industrial waste, and really nobody knows for sure what was dumped there because it was truly indiscriminate and unrecorded. And up until this year, it has defeated the attempts of all developers to clean up the site at a reasonable cost. But a developer came along and came up with a plan and said, I know how to clean this up, and I know how to do it at a way that's affordable. And indeed, much to everyone's surprise, the work has gone ahead and lots are being sold. But unusual situations call for unusual remedies, and what's happening is that a never-before-used method is being used to deal with this contaminated soil. And that is it's being scraped off the property and being put at the southern boundary of the property beside the CN rail line in what's called a containment cell. And this use of the containment cell is absolutely new to Nova Scotia. It is the first time there has been any kind of containment cell like this in the open in a residential area. So it's new for everybody. But there are certain fundamental things that should have been done that were not done. And one is to get security from the developer for the long-term maintenance of this property. Now, the problem is that the developer made long-term commitments. They're going to keep owning this containment cell, and they've made commitments far into the future, in perpetuity, essentially, to maintain this containment cell. But the developer, like all developers, set up a paper company to look after the development. The paper company, after the lots are sold, will have no assets, so the promise is being made by a paper company with no assets. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the way developers and other companies do business. The problem is that the government didn't ask for any security. And so it was only after the fact, after the work had started, at my request, that the department said, hey, how about some security for that promise? If things don't go the way we planned, where's the financial guarantee that you're going to be able to come up with the money to do what you've promised to do? And I asked in the last sitting of the House what the government's intention was on this, and again, at my request and my insistence, the discussions were underway, but there's been no report back to the House from the Minister of Environment about how that's going. Has security been obtained? And when I say security, I mean that in the legal, commercial sense of the word. Is there financial security for the developer's promises? This is something very important that should have been done and should be done for any future development. Because when somebody makes those kind of 25 and 50-year commitments, the nearby residents need to know that it will be carried out. Those are the issues, Mr. Speaker. Those are some of the issues on which I've been working on behalf of the residents of my constituency. Those are the issues on which I will continue to work. And if my constituents so desire, those are the issues on which I will continue to work after the next election, with the support of the government of the day, whoever that may be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and offer a few comments as we enter into supply. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't help but notice, I'm sure as all members of this House have noticed, the sights and the sounds out around Province House with the protesters that have pickets, with some rather concerning pieces of information on there that reflect rather badly upon this government's ability to deal with labour relations in the province of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I find it very disturbing that we have mentally challenged and seriously disabled individuals to this province being shoveled around. Yes, intellectually challenged individuals being moved around in such a callous form and uprooted from their rather wholesome environment that they're accustomed to, Mr. Speaker, all because the government is hiding under the veil of this arm's length relationship, to which it is really not an arm's length relationship in government. That being the society that's negotiating at the table with the unionized workers who are seeking wage parity on this rather vital issue. Mr. Speaker, let's forget about management. Let's forget about labor. Focus specifically on the disabled individuals who are adversely affected. Anyone in this chamber would have to recognize that they know, either directly or indirectly, someone in the province of Nova Scotia who is in a situation that requires the government's help and assistance on dealing with this rather social and psychologically difficult situation. It's also a health situation, Mr. Speaker. I can't help but think, every time we look over and see the member for Kings North, it's almost as if a cloud is following this member around. When he was Minister of Labour, Mr. Speaker, what do we have? We had one of the most intrusive labour disruptions in the healthcare system in the history of the province of Nova Scotia. And what did the government do? It brought in Bill 68, which effectively tried to strip all healthcare workers in this province from their legal rights on how to stand and fight for what they think is right or wrong. And who was the Minister of Labour? The Minister or the member for Kings North. Well, Mr. Speaker, that wasn't the only strike that honourable member was involved in his ministry. Now he's over as Minister of Community Services, and what's happened? The strike has found the strike has found its way over into this ministry. No matter where this honourable member goes, there's a strike. There's strike, and there's labour disruption, there's disharmony, and people seem to be adversely affected. Now, Mr. Speaker, you can't help but ask yourself, what's going on with this honourable member? What's going on with this minister? What is it that about he and his department that seems to cause so much disruption for so many people in the province of Nova Scotia? Mr. Speaker, it's an excellent opportunity for that honourable minister to stand in his place and give some clarity on this issue. Why is it that for more than 2 weeks we've had these protesters out in front of Province House complaining about a labour relations issue? Mr. Speaker, these healthcare workers do not want to be out there. They want to be doing what they're trained to do, and that is giving the care and the professional attention that they've been trained to do to ensure the health and the well-being of these residents in special needs homes right across the province. But instead, Mr. Speaker, what the government has done, as a silent partner, as a ghost representative at the table, is allowed these individuals and their lives to be disrupted. Not only the family members, but most importantly, Mr. Speaker, those who are mentally disabled, mentally challenged, intellectually challenged in so many different ways, in some cases physically disabled, to be disrupted. And the disharmony, Mr. Speaker, you can well imagine if someone in your community was uprooted and moved miles away into an environment to which he or she is not accustomed. And anyone who has had the opportunity to deal with a mentally challenged individual would know that it takes many years of nurturing and develop that very close, almost like a maternalistic relationship between the patient and the healthcare provider, Mr. Speaker, and had that ripped apart so surreptitiously, Mr. Speaker, without any consideration. I think it's wrong. It's wrong, and it's wrong for the government to sit here in such a cavalier fashion because it may have a right-wing neoconservative agenda against what they perceive to be left-wing socialists that are picketing in front of Province House. It's so wrong. It's so wrong-headed, Mr. Speaker, for this government to try and develop that mindset that they're only dealing with, oh, they're socialistic, they're NDP radicals out there just trying to stir up some healthcare workers so that they can whip up some mischief against the government. Well, it's not quite that simple, Mr. Speaker. And where does it all go? It all seems to follow the member for Kings North. When he was Minister of Labour, we had one strike after another strike after another strike. Now he's over in Community Services, and we still got a strike. That individual, he's definitely got a cloud over his head. King South. Well, maybe he will be Kings North after the next election, because the evidence seems to point to him not being the member for Kings South. So we have to leave until the jury is out. Now, the Minister of Environment and Labour, who took over his portfolio, he's the silent partner at the table. He should be leading the charge and resolving this Labour impasse. He should. He should. Where's the leadership? He's sitting there doing absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. He's letting them, I know there's a collective bargaining process, but Mr. Speaker, he can set the tone, he can set the direction, and he can certainly encourage the various stakeholders to get to the table. He could appoint a mediator, he could appoint an arbitrator, he can do a lot of things, Mr. Speaker, rather than just sit idly by and let these individuals who need special care to go back into the safe, healthy environments that they should be in. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's what I find most disturbing. Well, Mr. Speaker, I think it was Joseph Howe who once said, "I know the value of education by the lack of it." Well, Mr. Speaker, if ever there was an example of a government that should learn from the words of Joseph Howe, this rather esteemed politician, parliamentarian, freedom of the press, and a lot of other things. And yes, he was a liberal. Yes, he was a liberal. That's one of the great things about being Joseph Howe. He had the wisdom and the foresight to know, that's right. He was from Colchester.
This guy over here was a Tory and he's sound asleep.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to get into commenting on the poses for various historical figures, but suffice to say, Mr. Speaker, I think the most important thing to consider is that the government is deliberately and methodically allowing this situation to get worse. Matters are starting to fester to the point where those who need this very special care are not receiving it. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think it's wrong. If the Minister of Community Services or the Minister of Environment and Labour seem to have this very paternalistic, neoconservative mandria about how they think about public policy, well, that's one thing. But, Mr. Speaker, that's not what Nova Scotia is all about. It's not. It's not what we stand for. We're supposed to be a caring, compassionate, reasonable, fair-minded, and yes, prudent and fiscally responsible government, Mr. Speaker, and legislative assembly members. But, Mr. Speaker, we're not seeing that. We're only seeing one side of the equation. So I would hope, like the weather, maybe in 2 or 3 days' time, the cloud will lift. The cloud will lift off the member for Kings South head. He seems to be going around with this cloud in his head. Whatever department he goes to, Mr. Speaker, you can be guaranteed there's trouble. And Mr. Speaker, ever since he became a Minister of the Crown, there have been nothing but strikes and disharmony. And I would submit that the Premier, if anyone, should take notice of this, Mr. Speaker, because this is not right. And it's not fair to the very innocent people who have been caught in the crossfire. Mr. Speaker, I'm a little at loss. The Labour representatives on this particular issue have asked the government to appoint a mediator. They've asked. The government seems to want to take hands off. Why? It's not going to hurt to appoint a mediator or arbitrator or go to binding arbitration or whatever process the government would like to fast track to, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure all members of the opposition would certainly agree to that, Mr. Speaker. But we cannot, over nickels and dimes, allow this situation to get any worse. Mr. Speaker, because every day one of those mentally challenged or special needs individuals are out of their own home environment as they see it, Mr. Speaker, we are adding considerable cost and stress to the system. The cost of bringing those individuals back into their environment, Mr. Speaker, rather than, in some cases, near locking them up in the unit over in Dartmouth, over in the Dartmouth Hospital, Mr. Speaker, almost to the point of being submitted into an environment with barred doors and windows, Mr. Speaker, with heavy padlocks. That's not the way you treat these very special Nova Scotians. Is that the way we treat people who are most vulnerable, who are most at need? Mr. Speaker, I think that's absolutely callous. You know, when the shoe goes on the other foot, you know, you hear the wailing from the members opposite. Mr. Speaker, when members of the government were on this side of the House, well, every day you heard nothing but bleeding heart after bleeding heart after bleeding heart. You know, the most serious of issues, even to the most, or the least serious issue, they all took a strong stand. Now, Mr. Speaker, they're on that side of the House, and you don't even hear the Tory backbenchers on that side of the House, Mr. Speaker, stand up for their constituents who are adversely affected by the actions of this government on this labour relations matter. They are absolutely silent. And why? Why are they? Mr. Speaker, is there a gag order? Is there a gag order for them standing up for these special needs? Yes, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Mr. Speaker. We got Rambo from Colchester County now going to stand up because he doesn't want to register guns in this province. He doesn't believe in gun registry. You know, we have the Minister of Justice running to Ottawa saying that we shouldn't have gun registry, but he didn't take the time to consult with the RCMP, the regional police officers, the members in the justice system. He didn't consult with the various stakeholders. He went up because he thought it was politically popular to beat up on the federal government because the Auditor General took a stand about the accountability process. So what did they do? They took a serious issue and tried to politicize it because of the neoconservative agenda. That's exactly what they did, Mr. Speaker. What are they doing for the disabled in this province? What are they doing for the underprivileged? They are doing nothing but sitting there callously, Mr. Speaker, and I would submit, stop putting politics back into the justice system. That's what happened under John Buchanan's government. That's what happened, Mr. Speaker. And we recall, Mr. Speaker, royal commission upon inquiry. And what happened, Mr. Speaker? That Conservative government was turfed out on its ears. And, Mr. Speaker, I would submit that if what we saw from the Minister of Justice during estimates the other day is any indication of that, this government will be out on its ears too, Mr. Speaker. I realize my time is coming close to an end. I look forward to coming back and furthering this debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to have the occasion to rise in the House today on the debate on supply. And I'm also pleased to be able to share my time today with the member for the riding of the beautiful Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to change and shift some of the discussion right now from my colleague from Cape Breton West and talk about economic development as it relates not only to my area but throughout Nova Scotia. I'm very pleased and proud to represent the constituency of Cape Breton North. I'm even more looking forward to the fact that my riding does expand. It expands into Upper North Sydney, it expands into Little Pond, to Alder Point, Point of Coney. And the one thing that it is expanding with are with the opportunities within Cape Breton and throughout Nova Scotia as a result of this government's growth strategy, a strategy through opportunities for prosperity, a strategy that seeks to provide vision and clarity where it was lacking for years and years. And we've seen that, and I had an opportunity earlier today with my colleague from Colchester North to meet in Truro at the Nova Scotia Chamber of Commerce and have an engaged dialogue with them on the issues of importance to chambers from one end of this province to the other. And they spoke of both the opportunities and some of the concerns they have. And their concerns, of course, relate to the fact that wanting to see balance and equity, Everyone is very encouraged by the growth and the prosperity here within the capital district, but want to make sure that that opportunity and prosperity goes out throughout the province. And I've been pleased to be the minister to travel this province from one end to the other, to be doing it again, meeting at the grassroots level, meeting with community groups, individual businesses, our RDAs, chambers of commerce, and anyone that's committed, the hundreds of volunteers that give of their time to serve in trying to grow the economy and the prosperity of our province. And we'll be detailing that even further. So economic development, Mr. Speaker, has undergone a structural change, and that new model, a hub and spoke with the 5 Crown corporations that report to my portfolio as minister, Nova Scotia Business Incorporated, the Nova Scotia Film Development Corporation, Innovacor, the Waterfront Development Corporation Limited, as well as the World Trade and Convention Centre, all of which are fully integrated and helping to grow opportunities here in the province of Nova Scotia. And as well, Mr. Speaker, I look at the view of how people have come together and cooperate. We look at the World Juniors, the fact that it wasn't just a Halifax event, that there was opportunity to share that with Sydney, and a great opportunity for people in that area to be fully engaged in that world-class event, as well as with an exhibition game that was in Antigonish. As well as we see the opportunities in the film sector, and I had an opportunity just last Friday to meet with officials and members of the film community in Cape Breton and to explore the opportunities that they see for future opportunities and to listen to the comments they have. But back, Mr. Speaker, to the Chamber of Commerce. They very clearly said that they want to have a voice and they want to see some very clear strategic planning for the future of all sectors. And they looked at infrastructure and how important that is. And we talked about the discussions we have with the Halifax International Airport Authority on air access and our ability to work and to help facilitate a regional strategy, and my workings with the other ministers from Atlantic Canada to note that we do want customs pre-clearance for the Halifax International. We do want to see a greater connectivity with the northeastern United States. And why? So we can grow the ability to expand networks and opportunities to our regional airports. Very pleased to see Southwest Air in Yarmouth start up a service after Air Canada pulled out. Very pleased to see them working on air cargo. We see in Sydney the concerns that the Airport Authority has there with Air Canada's adjustments and the issues there. We take that very seriously as a government, Mr. Speaker, and we look forward to making sure we move an agenda and seek to identify the opportunities that keep Sydney fully integrated into the air structure. We've talked as well, and I have a very personal commitment and interest with regards to rail in the province of Nova Scotia and its linkages, not just through the port city, but obviously into eastern Nova Scotia and the issue we resolved recently with the Cape Breton and Central Nova Scotia Railway. Maintain that strategic infrastructure, not only with the challenges of the day, but seeing to the long-term future that it is to the benefit of our economy. And we're coordinating with them. We work with CN and other stakeholders and the short line operators to grow that. We've seen this government, Mr. Speaker, look to the highways and where possible expand time and time again on improvements to our highway network. We see twinning projects. In my area, I was very pleased, Mr. Speaker, to announce $12 million for the twinning of the highway from Balls Creek to Sydney River, $8.4 million from the province of Nova Scotia for that. We've seen other improvements on the 125. We've seen improvements again last year in the Sydney-Glace Bay Highway. We'll see yet again continued improvements on the route number 4 and the Trans-Canada, and we're seeing it everywhere. We see a major investment by this government in refitting the deck of the Sea Island Bridge. Infrastructure and roads in the province, whether it's twinning, we're there as a government, we're expanding our capacity, our infrastructure to ensure that Nova Scotia is fully linked. And also, Mr. Speaker, whether it's in the Port of Sydney, in the Strait area, in the Port Hawkesbury and Mulgrave area, or as well here in the Port of Halifax or Shelburne or Yarmouth, we are fully aware of the need to ensure that our ports are safe, that we have a strategy that looks to the niche opportunities that exist outside of the port area of Halifax, and we're committed once again to do that. So this government, from an economic model, ensures that our infrastructure is solid, that we have a firm understanding of what it is we need to do to facilitate better business in the province. And to that, Mr. Speaker, I've been very pleased, and I will be articulating further around the province of Nova Scotia the initiatives that we will be undertaking to support further small business in this province, whether that is dealing with loans, working with the credit unions, Central, and the Cooperatives Council for Nova Scotia. We're working with the CBDCs, the Community Business Development Corporations, and engage dialogue with them to look at how we enhance opportunities. I've worked directly with Nova Scotia Business Inc., our business promotion and trade advancement wing of government, as a privately sector-driven entity, We're working with them to look at what other needs we can have in programming for small business, and they're ensuring that we have a full set of opportunities that we can offer to people. But we're doing that in consultation with the regional development authorities, as I say, with individual businesses, to ensure that the smallest of businesses in the province have the priority and the attention of this government, and indeed the investment of this government to the largest businesses. And I had the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to travel to many of the key signature industries in this province and have ensured that we fully engage ourselves into a dialogue with industry to look at not only the immediate but the long-term needs to strengthen those traditional bases, whether that's the Michelin, and I had a chance to visit all 3 Michelin plants, whether that's with Stora, our recent $15 million announcement there towards their $90 million expansion to secure 500 full-time jobs in that area and to provide stability to further grow the economy of the Strait area. Whether that's our investments, Mr. Speaker, in the telecommunications sector and with the customer interaction centres. We have been there. We have been a partner, whether that's with industry, with other levels of government, and with community. We've ensured, Mr. Speaker, that this government is listening, this government understands the needs, and this government responds. We've done it solidly. That's why, Mr. Speaker, for the first time in Nova Scotia history, 5 different times in the last 18 months, we've hit record high levels of employment in this province. In March, Mr. Speaker, 436,300 Nova Scotians, an all-time high, because our opportunity for prosperity, the growth strategy is working, and I'll be expanding on that with a progress report, and I'll be going out yet again and ensuring that we take what it is we see as priorities and hear as priorities from Nova Scotians and put it into action. I'm very pleased as well as we work with community groups, whether that's the BCA Investment Cooperative and the efforts that they're doing through their CDFs, gaining more money from the community, exceeding their targets yet again, working with them on their investments they're making in the community, whether that's a condominium development, whether that's faith and the belief in what's going on at Sidport to Laurentian Energy, where we see groups investing in that, and a proposal for $3.5 million. Half of that money has been put up by the community, Mr. Speaker, by individuals that believe that Cape Breton is on the verge of much more and much better, but they recognize they're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're asking government to be there with them. Well, I'm very pleased to be working with them, to see the member to Band Council investing in it, to see BCA Cooperative investment, to see the Grow Cape Breton Partnership investing, to see individuals from throughout the community putting their faith into action by putting money on the table because they know their faith in Cape Breton and their belief that there is a better day and a better future. That speaks well to industry, and no different than in the Strait area, Mr. Speaker, with the Superport Corp and their efforts with the infrastructure related to this fly base for offshore. Well, once again, making investments strategic, government's there, and we look forward to other opportunities. Dealing with some of the challenges we have, Mr. Speaker, and I speak of, for instance, in the Strait area, the U.S. gypsum site. Nova Scotia Business Inc. and this government have been working with proponents that are looking at new and future uses for that site. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, is we're talking to people who want to invest to do business in the province of Nova Scotia. Whether it was opportunities in Shelburne County, Mr. Speaker, when we've talked to the Einskip, the Icelandic shipping company, that calls Shelburne their home port here in the province of Nova Scotia because they know it's a good port, they have a consistent, reliable workforce there dedicated to meeting their needs, competing in an international environment. Whether it's down in Yarmouth County, Mr. Speaker, and the businesses that are growing there, customer interactions, wherever we go in the province of Nova Scotia, we're seeing one thing loud and clear. People are committed to prosperity, they're committed to competitiveness in the global marketplace, and Mr. Speaker, they're committed to ensuring that the quality of living will reach our vision as a government, that by 2010, Nova Scotia will be the best place in Canada to live, to do work, to do business, and raise families. And Mr. Speaker, we're going to attain that goal, I'm sure, before 2010 with many more records. When we look to the fact that we have some of the most business competitive communities, in a recent study that showed that Halifax, Truro, and Sydney are among the most competitive in the world to do business in. Mr. Speaker, it is permeating throughout this province. It's something I'm extremely proud of, and I know it's well at work in my riding in Cape Breton North, and I'm pleased to represent that area, and I'm going to be very pleased, Mr. Speaker, to go to the polls and make sure that the good work of this government continues for many years to come, and I welcome my colleague from the beautiful Colchester-Muscatawba Valley.
An excellent job in explaining the benefits of living in the province of Nova Scotia. And in fact, I'm very privileged and honored that the Honourable Minister of Economic Development took time out of his busy schedule to meet with some business members in my community, a very important business to Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley, and I'm very pleased with the outcome, and I want to thank the Honourable Minister publicly, and as well as I already have privately, Mr. Speaker. Again, here we are in the first responsible government in the British Empire, and Mr. Speaker, we're privileged today to have a member of Parliament with us from the United Kingdom. Welcome, MP Browning, and your delegation that are with you. And I'm also very honored that some countries in this great world took time out of what you would have to say was their very busy schedule to fight to preserve the democracy and the peace and the freedom that we enjoy in this great country, Canada. And it's delightful that the people from not only England but the United States and Australia really worked diligently and on behalf of all democracies in this great world. Now, Mr. Speaker, just to speak ever so briefly on the piece of legislation that was brought forward by the Honourable Member for Cape Breton Fairview, Halifax Fairview, I apologize, was an oversight. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton West refers to his colleagues on the right so often. Perhaps it has confounded the member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley, but quite honestly, the legislation that he did bring forward regarding a bill to permit traffic authorities to prohibit the use of diesel engine enhanced braking systems while operating a vehicle on a highway for which the speed limit is more than 50 kilometers per hour was certainly instigated because of concerns that the member has received from members in Halifax Fairview. And I know that in my community we have concerns and as well in Brookfield, the Musquodoboit Valley, Upper Musquodoboit Valley, with some truckers. The Honourable Member referred to them, the ones that are a little bit disrespectful, as being cowboys, and that label's been around for some time. And unfortunately, there is a very small percentage that flick on these engine brakes, Mr. Speaker, and it really is noise pollution. And as this bill proceeds through the House, I would like to speak on this piece of legislation. We do have some concerns because the Honourable Member didn't indicate, and the legislation doesn't represent what speed limit he thinks that prohibition would be reasonable in terms of effect. You know, is it 60 kilometers per hour? Is it 70? Is it 80? Is it 90? Is it 110? Does the Honourable Member want traffic authorities to have permission to prohibit the use of an engine brake out on a 100 series highway, or when you're coming off an off-ramp, rather? I think the legislation needs some greater clarification, without question. And I know that members of the Atlantic Provinces Truckers Association would have concerns, and consultation may not have been widely held on this issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know the time has expired.
The motion is carried.
The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would you please call the estimates of the Minister of Education?
Yes, the estimates of the Honourable the Minister of Education. The NDP caucus, I believe, has 19 minutes approximately left. The Honourable the Member for Halifax-Shabukdo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we left off the other day, I was asking some questions of the Honourable Minister. I think at this point I've really covered the main topics that I'm interested in discussing with them, and so for the remainder of the time, I'm going to invite my colleague from Cape Breton Centre to continue the questioning. Thank you.
The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to interrupt the honourable members opposite, but we're getting no sound on this side.
No sound.
Okay, go ahead.
The Honourable the Member for Cape Breton Centre. Is the little
I can hear you fine.
The little red light on?
The little red light is on, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member's lit up. He may proceed.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it wouldn't be the first time I was lit up in this
Figuratively
house.
speaking.
I was lit up in this house before, Mr. Speaker, but I'm going to try to get half lit today, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank the Honourable Minister for making himself available for estimates today. Now, Minister, there's a few areas I want to discuss with you while we have roughly 18 minutes or so, and I think, to no surprise to you, will probably the McDonald complex and so on, and what happened in and around there. Now, as no doubt you're aware, and because you have met, as the deputy has, with a community group representing the students at the McDonald complex and the disaster that happened there. Now, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair, for those in attendance that may not know what happened at that McDonald complex, was that school in late October, early November this year had to be closed because of subsidence. Subsidence caused by years of underground mining and subterranean mining in and around that facility. So I guess my first question to you, Minister, is when were you first made aware of what was going on at the McDonald complex, and what was your reaction to try to resolve that problem?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was made aware of the situation shortly after I was. I had previous knowledge as a result of being in the House, but I was briefed by department officials shortly after I was sworn in as minister.
The Honourable the Member for Cape Breton Centre.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I know the minister didn't go after part two. Is what did he then do when he was apprised of the situation? So maybe I'll give him a bit better of a lead into that question. There is a fairly large school of thought, Mr. Chair, that the federal government, by way of having leases, the coal leases in that area, and having allowed those former mine workings to flood, bear a great deal of responsibility for the subsidence to that location. And so I guess I want to ask the minister more directly is what does your department have done in conjunction with the federal government to see the amount of onus lying on their behalf with regards to McDonald complex?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As the honourable member can appreciate, this is a problem that is well beyond simply the site of the McDonald complex. It's a problem that potentially encompasses a lot of areas within the province of Nova Scotia. And relative to discussions with the federal government, and we have also had discussions with the Department of Justice of the province. We are working with intergovernmental affairs relative to communications that take place with Ottawa with respect to the problems referenced by the honourable member.
The member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Chair. Well, that is fine, and I would say that would be an adequate answer if indeed there had been somewhere in the middle of an unpopulated area that ground had suddenly fallen under by the weight of a subterranean mine being washed away. But this is a case that I think has a great deal of urgency. It's not one to say, well, we're going to send envoys back and forth between Halifax and Ottawa and talk about who's responsible here. Clearly, Minister, you've taken the position that you will not be building a school in the town of Dominion. You've said that publicly, and I believe you probably even said it in this House. But what we have here is a total disregard for the importance of what a school means to a community. Now, you can sit here and make some points I would agree with in the fact of there is an abundance of classrooms, no argument. That they're in relatively close proximity, really no argument. But that's taking the very, very narrow view of education costs the province money. It's not education as an investment. It's education on the cheap, if you will. We do not look at what a school means to the broader community, what it means for the community to use it as an access point. We've seen the downside of schools, particularly 3P schools, where communities quite literally cannot use them after hours because of restrictions by the third-party owner, Mr. Chair. So what I'm saying is, why are you looking at this only in the context, the very narrow context of money, not as what it would give that overall community? There'll be really little or no growth. We just heard the Minister of Economic Development telling us, that we're just ready to turn the corner of prosperity in industrial Cape Breton. That what happens there when all the small businesses close? What happens, to your perspective, when a previous Tory government allowed that school to be built there? How do you put them all together and reconcile it and say that is the best for education for that community? Can you reconcile that for me, Minister?
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The member says to me, how can I put it only in the context of money? And the fact of the matter is, Mr. Chairman, that all of us, regardless of what department of government we're responsible for, must operate within a budget that's allocated to us. And that is, of course, what all of this discussion is about, are the budgetary requests of departments relative to the operational needs. There will, of course, be a motion brought before the House with respect to the capital needs of the government, and in that particular motion, of course, items such as the construction of schools would be discussed, or would be appropriate to discuss them. Not that it's inappropriate for you to question me on it now, but I'm just simply making the link that the capital needs of government are of course, very important and very significant with respect to what it is that we can and cannot do. Our responsibility as a department is to ensure that there are adequate educational facilities available to the students of this province. And in the case of Dominion, it's obviously a very unfortunate occurrence that has occurred there. But those students, their needs are being cared for currently, and they will be cared for into the future. Now, and I can also remind the honourable member that we are committed to working with the school board to ensure that there continues to be in operation an elementary school in Dominion. It is operating now. We hope that it will be able to continue to operate into the future. I will also point out to the honourable member that I did shortly after becoming minister have a brief telephone conversation with the parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister, who represents that area. I made an effort to get back to him with respect to a discussion we've had, but that was prior to a meeting that he was going to in the area. I did not make contact with him in terms of getting back to him. But my responsibility and the responsibility of the government is to ensure that there are facilities for the students to attend school. Those facilities are available. We will ensure that they continue to be available in the future, and we will do our best to continue to look after the educational needs of those students.
The Cape Breton Centre member.
Thank you, Chair. It disturbs me that when you use words like adequate, you know, I always thought we strove to be a bit better than just adequate, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, and I guess that's the defining point of this government. As long as it's adequate, not that we're not going to be silly and strive for excellence. We're going to strive to be adequate. So adequate certainly has a connotation to me of being just passing. If we can get people at 51, will be much better than striving for 80s and 90s. So what we have done here is what you did tell me, Minister, very sorrowfully, is that it's about money. It isn't about community. It's about a blatant cost factor. It's not a matter of trying to find, you know, the best dollars to fit. It's about just straight, we've got $5 and here's how we're going to split it. And that's a shame, you know, because, you know, that's not the type of province that I thought I was brought up in, nor my family, nor certainly my children. I was brought up in a province that certainly was there to help people when they were in need and recognize the real problems that beface them, beset them, Mr. Chairman. But this government is clearly a straight dollars and cents. You lost your school through the tragedy of subsidence. So what? Had that same school been lost on a Halloween prank and someone burnt it to the ground, we'd be in the midst of reconstructing that school. And yet this government in no way sees the value of keeping that school. It says we have excess seating capacity in another school, therefore it's going to go that way. So it's a very sad day indeed, Minister, that you would stand in your place and tell us that schools are about dollars. It's not about education. It's not about students. It's not about community. It's not about future work responsibilities. It's nothing but the green. I'm quite disappointed in that, Mr. Minister, to say the least. There's another point on this, that there's probably in another arena we would use culpability with it, and that is it was a previous Tory government that agreed to build that school there, that did not bother to listen to the architectural misgivings and talking about the structure there. Yet, you don't want to go revisit that, but what you want to do is put young children on a bus and send them out of their community. So I want to go back to you, Minister, and say, from a historical context, have you looked at that report, and do you concur that that was the best place to build that school?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
I want to thank the honourable member for his questions, and he raised a number of issues in his preamble leading up to his question. The facts, as I understand it, and I can hardly be held accountable for decisions that were taken long before I became minister, but the facts, as I understand them, were that the community very much wanted a school to be built next to the existing elementary school that was there. The decision was taken with respect to that. Should there have been more work done with respect to investigating the issue of subsidence? Hindsight is a great teacher, and we have a responsibility now to ensure that the students who are attending school from Dominion have good facilities in which to attend school. And we are taking the action that's required to make the existing facilities available to those students. We are taking long-term action, working with the school board to ensure that those students have good facilities in which to attend school. And Mr. Speaker, the honourable member used the word greed with respect to the basis of our decision, and I I would ask him to consider the use of that word in a context when we have we inherited a $500 million shortfall with respect to our deferred maintenance in schools. So, you know, what schools in the province is the honourable member suggesting that we not repair? We have capital requirements throughout the province, and the honourable member is not suggesting to us which areas of the province should not receive the schools which they require in order that another school would be built in his community, despite the fact that the students attending or who would attend that school are currently being housed in another good facility, and they will continue to be housed in good facilities in and around the community. So, Mr. Chairman, it's very easy for the honourable member to say simply find 8 or 10 or whatever the number would be, $1 million, and go ahead and build the school. And do that at a time when there are existing facilities which are not being occupied fully, which can house the students from Dominion and look after their educational needs and look after them very adequately. That is the decision that we have to take here. I stand by that decision because I believe from an educational perspective and from a sound fiscal management perspective, it is a good decision for those students and for the people of this province.
The honourable member has approximately 20 seconds.
Okay, Mr. Speaker. Well, I guess then I'm saying you have not done your job properly. You've not pursued the federal government with as much vigor as you should have. It's a whole lack of concern for the people in that community. And Minister, you should be ashamed of yourself for not trying to act in a reasonable manner to help to protect the school for that community. It's a central part of that community.
Member's time and the NDP's time at this time has expired. We will move to the Liberal caucus. The Honourable, the member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, it's a pleasure to rise today to speak and ask some questions on the education estimates. And I'd like to start off with an issue which I'm sure the Minister is well aware of, as it impacts us very dearly in the Strait area. And I'm sure the member from Inverness and the member from Guysborough-Port Hawkesbury will be well aware of the situation that we face in the Strait area in light of our education system. And Speaker, the fact is that we are in a crisis situation in the Strait, and unless something is done to address the challenges that we face and to address them immediately, then we are going to continue to face that crisis. Mr. Speaker, the problem in the Strait is not a problem that developed yesterday, and not even I, as partisan as I may be at sometimes, would lay the full blame on the Conservatives for the situations we do find ourselves in. But, Mr. Speaker, the fact is, unfortunately, it's a reality faced by many communities in rural Nova Scotia. And the fact is that the numbers being provided tell us that in 1996, the Strait Regional School Board had 12,000 students in their education system. Today, as I stand here, we are down to 9,500 students. Mr. Chair, I'd like to tell you that that is the end of the reduction in students, but unfortunately it is not. The numbers currently being projected by the Strait Regional School Board tell us that in the year of 2003-2004, the next school year, we will be another 380 fewer students than what we have now. In fact, we also have the numbers in from 2004 to 2005, which tells us that in that year we will have 400 fewer students than what we have today. Mr. Speaker, if one wants to go even further, it is projected that from now till 2008, the Strait Regional School Board will lose up to 1,000 students out of its system. Mr. Speaker, what is the result? Under the current financing methods used for education in the system, which is such that school boards receive funding based on the amount of students that they have, it obviously means that there's going to be less funding coming to the Strait Regional School Board to carry out its programs and services. Next year, for example, Mr. Speaker, as a result of the reduction of 380 students, it is predicted that 16 positions teaching positions will have to be cut throughout the Strait Regional School Board. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, there have been significant reductions in teaching positions from one...
Honourable members, I'm wondering if you could turn down those private conversations a little bit. It's very difficult to hear the member that has the floor, which is the member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Talking about your area.
As I said, 16 fewer teaching positions is what the board is looking at right now if their numbers hold true. There have been significant reductions in the number of teachers throughout the entire Strait Regional School Board, and I'm sure that this is a fact that the Minister is aware of as the MLA for Antigonish, the Minister of Tourism as the MLA for Inverness, and the member for Guys Report Hawkesbury will all be well aware of the impact that these cuts and these loss of teachers is having. So I guess my first question is, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if the Minister could indicate to us, in the last 4 years since the Conservatives have come to power, what efforts and what decisions have been taken to address this need in the current Minister's own backyard, that being the Strait Regional Board.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and the honourable member does highlight a problem that is very real, and I believe earlier in the estimates I've indicated that it is not a problem that is confined to simply Nova Scotia or indeed in particular the Strait area or the Cape Breton board. It is a problem that is being faced by all educational jurisdictions right across the country. And there are quite a few different approaches that are being considered with respect to addressing this concern. And we have and will receive in the very near future a report from the regional education officer for that area, who is working with school board officials and Department of Education officials, a report specific to the subject that the honourable member mentions. And that is our capacity to be able to deal with the very real problems that arise as a result of attempting to deliver our educational programs in areas where we have a significant decline in the population. It should be noted that the decline in population, while it is felt perhaps more acutely in Cape Breton and in the Strait area, is a province-wide phenomena. And if you look at the enrollment province-wide, the Annapolis Valley Board is a decrease of 521. If we look at Cape Breton Board, it is 692. The Chignecto Central is 490 students. CSAP is a slight increase. But even the Halifax Regional School Board has a decline of 744 students. The Southwest Board, 354. And as the honourable member indicated, the Strait Regional Board is 394. These are declines that are very real right across the province. And the total in 1997, for instance, there was a decline of 1,127 students, and in 2002, there's a decline of 3,162 students province-wide. So there are, very real problems that arise as a result of that, and we are addressing them. As I indicated, Mr. Burton's report will be coming forward very shortly. But while awaiting that, we have been very sensitive to the distribution of additional funds to boards throughout the province, so that there is a recognition of the challenges facing boards who are facing significant declines in enrollment, and we are attempting to adjust the funding to those boards in a manner that cushions the blow somewhat as the boards move from one year of declining enrollment to another year of declining enrollment. It is obviously an ongoing problem, and projections into the future would suggest to us that it is not a problem that is going to be turned around in the very near future. if the honourable member would entertain a slight challenge, Mr. Chairman, I could say to him he's at a stage in life where he could take some actions to perhaps do something about that, but that's his business.
The Honourable the Member for Richmond.
I can tell the honourable minister that my sister and her husband now have 3 children, and I've been encouraging her to continue to practice as much as possible to try to address those drops in declining enrollment. Unfortunately, I'll just have to take the minister's recommendation under advisement for the time being. Minister, I appreciate this is not a problem isolated to the Strait. It is a problem throughout the province. But if you look at the Strait area in particular, and the Strait Board as to what it has undergone in the last 10 years, for example, it has undergone significant drops, which I would argue is probably unprecedented in other boards for the amount of reductions taking place. As a result, the amount of school closures which have had to be undertaken to consolidate the reality of declining enrollments, and the amount of teaching staff. And unfortunately, I don't have the numbers before me, and I'd love to have them, of what the teaching staff was in the Strait Board a number of years ago compared to what it is now, because we have seen a significant reduction. And more what we are seeing, Mr. Chair, is schools. A lot of students are being forced to take these distance education courses because of the fact that there are not enough students to warrant a teacher to give these courses, and more students are spending their time on a computer to learn in the classroom rather than having a teacher in the classroom giving those courses, and it's not getting any better. Speaker, I don't pretend to say that there's simple solutions to this problem, but I would remind the minister on page 25 of their Blue Book under education, it does say during the first mandate that a Conservative government will review funding formulas to protect schools in areas of declining enrollments from detrimental and untimely reductions in teaching staff. Mr. Speaker, we have that in the Strait Board. We have had that for the last 4 years. This government has been in office for 4 years now. The Strait Board right now is looking at losing another 16 teachers next year. Therefore, I ask the minister, what assurances can he give to me, to the parents, the students, and the Strait Board that his government will provide the funding necessary to avoid the loss of another 16 teachers next year, and will he make that commitment today?
The Education Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. What I can commit to the honourable member is that we will continue to work with the school board to ensure that the programs that are needed for the students served by the Strait Regional School Board will be made available to those students. And it is not, the answer to that is not simply a matter of providing additional sums of money so that teachers can be kept on the payroll, when in fact the number of students that are being served by those teachers are declining. The challenge, rather, is to find a way to ensure that the programs that are required by the students served by that board are delivered to those students in an effective manner. And the honourable member made reference to distance education, and I can tell the honourable member that first of all, I'm very impressed with the accomplishments of the Strait Regional School Board with respect to the delivery of distance education, and they are leaders in this province with respect to that particular phenomena. I can also indicate to the honourable member that when you discuss this problem with jurisdictions nationally, that they also look very much at the use of technology and the use of distance education as being only a part of the solution, but nevertheless a significant part of the solution. We have put together the group chaired by Mr. Burton. That report will be forthcoming in the very near future, and we will be responding to that report in a manner that will allow us to ensure that our schools right across this province are able to continue to deliver our educational program to our students in an effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member from Richmond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. But again, I would remind the minister you may want to read the Blue Book, which again says review funding formulas to protect schools in areas of declining enrollments from detrimental and untimely reductions in the teaching staff. So it is not myself who's saying that funding is the answer. Your Blue Book seems to be saying that funding is the answer. So that was not my suggestion. It was the suggestion your government has presented. Distance education, there's no doubt that the Strait Board has been a leader in this. The problem is becoming, at first, it was being put out there for courses such as advanced math, where there wasn't enough students who were interested in taking this course to warrant a teacher, advanced biology, advanced chemistry. But Mr. Chair, 16 more teachers lost next year. We're coming to the point that it's not these advanced courses that are going to be distance education. Your core courses are coming to the point where you do not have the amount of teachers necessary to provide these. And Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I can tell you that the Strait Board, and I certainly have a bias of the Strait Board, but the Strait Board is known throughout this province and outside this province at producing some of the best competent students of any board in this province. The rate of students from the Strait Board who attend post-secondary university and go on into professions, I would argue, is probably just as high percentage as any other board in the province or any other board in Atlantic Canada. But Mr. Chair, the results are coming in. The national test scores that have come in were particularly unfavorable towards the Strait Regional School Board in the results that came in. Mr. Chair, that is very disappointing to me, and it is alarming to me to see that courses such as chemistry and math, for example, I believe, had some of the lowest scores of anywheres in the province in the Strait Board. That is not the tradition of excellence that we have been so proud of in the Strait Board. And I would submit to you, Mr. Chair, it is not because the quality of our students is not sufficient to warrant better scores. It is because we have had continuing cuts to our education system, to the teaching staff, and that has to be reversed until we come to the point where our students are no longer receiving the quality education we want to see them enjoy. I appreciate the minister saying that Mr. Burton's coming forward with a report, but again, it has been 4 years that this government has said that they would address this problem. And again, I would submit the Blue Book clearly says it would be done during the first mandate, which we all know appears to be coming to an end sooner rather than later. So I ask again, will the minister commit today? He obviously must have an idea of what Mr. Burton's report is going to indicate. Will the minister commit today that the funding will be put in place, or that it will be at least frozen at this year's levels to ensure that the Strait Board will not be forced to eliminate another 16 teaching positions in the next school year? Will he commit to that?
Thank you. I'll direct that to the Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to point out to the honourable member that the report of Mr. Burton's group is very much part of the commitment that was made in the Blue Book. And we will, when we have that report, of course, we will work expeditiously in order to ensure that those elements of the report that are achievable are acted upon. But I would like to point out to the honourable member that indeed we have been very much aware of the problems faced by the Strait Regional Board, and I can tell you that the average amount paid per student in this province is $5,567. That's proposed for 03-04, and the amount that the Strait Regional Board will receive is $6,611. That's an $1,100 more than the average paid out in this province, and I believe that's a very significant recognition of the problems faced by that board, and it's a part of our commitment to address those concerns, and we will continue to address those concerns. Now, the problem relative to delivery of some courses is not so much a problem related to teachers being available for the delivery of the courses as it is a problem of the having enough students in a school in order to be able to effectively put on courses. And that's where the real benefit of distance education comes in. And it's one of the reasons that we will rely on that as being part of the solution to this. But I do point out that paying $1,100 more per student in the Strait Regional Board than is paid elsewhere in the province is a very much a recognition of the problems and concerns of that board. And so the honourable member, I believe, should recognize that we indeed have taken very significant steps to address these concerns, and we will continue to do so in the future.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member from Richmond.
Mr. Chair, very simply, will the minister commit today that the funding will be put in place to the Strait Board so that the 16 teaching positions which are currently on the chopping block because of declining enrollment, that those cuts will not have to be made at this board? Will he give that assurance today, yes or no, that the funding will be there so that these positions do not have to be cut?
Thank you, member. The honourable Minister of Education.
The honourable member, Mr. Speaker, knows full well what the answer to that question is, and he wants to embellish it and talk about the impact. The impact in the Strait area isn't different than it is in other parts of this province. There is declining enrollment, and as a result of declining enrollment, fewer teachers are required to deliver the programs in this province, and those are decisions boards have to take. The boards have the money, they know what they're going to have for the coming year, and they know the decisions that they have to take with respect to the realities of declining enrollment relative to the money they have available. I point out again that the Strait Board receives $1,100 per student more than other boards in this province, and that's a very real recognition of the challenges that face them.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member from Richmond.
Will the minister commit today that the funding will be given to the Strait Board necessary to ensure that the 16 positions currently being proposed for elimination will not have to be cut, and that in fact those 16 teaching positions will be maintained for next year?
Thank you, member. I'll direct that question to the honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, to make a commitment such as that would mean that I'd have to get the Minister of Finance to completely revamp the budget as it is presented. The honourable member knows what the numbers are, and those numbers have been made aware and to all of the boards, and the numbers are the numbers, and the boards will be making the decisions that they need to make to deal with the problems that present themselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member from Richmond.
Well, Mr. Speaker, obviously the answer is no, that commitment won't be made. And it's unfortunate because when we had the Minister of Education coming from Halifax Citadel, it was frustrating to try to get her to appreciate the situation faced by the Strait Regional School Board. And I know that many of the teachers, the parents and staff said, well, now that we have a Minister of Education whose jurisdiction is the Strait Regional School Board, we are sure that he will have a good appreciation of the cuts that we have faced over the years, the reductions in staff, the impact it has had on the students, and that the minister will certainly pay close attention to the situation at the Strait and make the necessary investments to back up what his own Blue Book on page 25 actually promises that the government will do. And clearly, after 4 years, we're nowhere further with this minister than we were with the minister when she was from Halifax Citadel, and that's unfortunate for the Strait area. I know they certainly expected much more from that. Speaker, I wanted to, Chair, I also wanted to ask the minister, there was a 3-year, $8 million capital funding commitment made to universities here in this province. I believe the $8 million started in 1998, 1999, and I believe it ended either in 2000, 2001. It was a total of $24 million that was given to Nova Scotia universities to help them with capital infrastructure, such as meeting the needs of repairing some of their older buildings and making some infrastructure improvements on the on the campuses. That was $24 million, $8 million over 3 years. I'm wondering if the Minister of Education could tell us what the current status of that funding commitment is today to the Nova Scotia universities.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
You're giving 6 a share.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'm told that figure 8, 8, and 8 was in fact operating and not capital. And we are working with the universities with respect to addressing their deferred maintenance problems, and they will be part of ongoing discussions with the universities as we move forward. I do want to go back and point out to the honourable member with respect to the straight board that the student-teacher ratio of the straight board is 15.5 students per teacher. The provincial average is 16.5. That is a very significant contribution to the needs, special needs of that particular board. And Mr. Chairman, I'm very pleased with what my predecessor has done to assist that and other boards in this province. And I'm quite pleased with what we're continuing to do to assist those boards, and we will continue to work with them in the future.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member from Richmond.
Well, Mr. Chair, on that point, I guess it is the parents and teachers of the straight board that will pass judgment on this government's efforts to meet the needs of the declining enrollments and teacher cuts, and the fact that the Minister of Education, who is from Antigonish, is now saying that he is not prepared to commit that the 16 teaching cuts that may take place next year will not happen. Certainly, I think, tells the tale right there as to what the government's commitment is to meet the crisis situation faced in that area. But again, I digress. It is the voters of the straight board that will pass judgment on that. Speaker, the fact is that $24 million commitment, when it did expire after the 3 years, this government did not renew that commitment. You know, when the Minister of Education talks about university funding and continues to refer to the 90s, I believe is how he likes to say it, continues to forget about the significant investments that were made during that time. But I will come back to that later. One of the other issues I wanted to touch on. It's my understanding that the Youth Employment Skills Program has been transferred from the Department of Economic Development to the Department of Education. And I'm curious if the Minister could tell us what is the amount of funding that is made available this year for the Youth Employment Skills Program, and how many students is it anticipated will be provided with employment this summer?
Thank you, member. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, we'll endeavour to find that number for the honourable member. While the number is being found, I want to point out that within the existing funding formula for universities in this year, there is an amount of $7.7 million, which is described as being for non-space and alterations and renovations, and it is within the $205 million that we make available to the universities, and that is an ongoing figure that is available to those. With respect to his previous, or the first question that he asked on this, or the question he asked, which has brought me to my feet, it is an amount of $1.685 million that's being made available for that training in this fiscal year.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member from Richmond.
Well, there was a second part to the question. The second part was how many positions will this provide for? In other words, how many students will it employ? But along with that, when the minister gets that figure, could the minister also indicate what was the level of funding made available to that program last year?
Thank you, member. Honourable Minister of Education on the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with respect to the number of students that will be affected by the program, I will take that as notice and get back to the honourable member with that. The amount of 1.685, to the best of my knowledge, that number is the same as it was in the previous year. But again, I would want to go back and and confirm that answer.
Back to the honourable member from Richmond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would appreciate if the minister could get that figure to us as soon as possible, because the reason I ask is he'll probably be aware that in the last couple of years, I believe it was maybe 2 years ago, that your government cut that program significantly from where it was at. And so I'm curious to see as to whether we're seeing any further cuts to that program now. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the cuts that were made by your government a few years ago were almost half of the it was almost cut to half of what the program previously was, or if not half, it was certainly significant reduction in funding to that program. So I'm curious to see what the funding numbers were last year and how many jobs we can expect this year. My understanding was in the last 2 years, the actual amount of grants that were awarded to nonprofit organizations was based on some sort of a criteria where it was primarily targeted for areas with high unemployment rates throughout the province, mostly in rural Nova Scotia. I'm curious as to whether that practice is still what will be undertaken this year in determining which counties get what amount of summer positions each county is going to receive. Is that still tied in with the unemployment rate in those areas?
Thank you, member. Direct the question to the Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank the member for the question. That method of determining distribution has not changed, but I do want to point out that a number of a portion of this program has been dedicated to the Public Service Commission to look after programs which they have had in the past and will continue to have in the future. But the criteria that is suggested by the honourable member is a criteria that's still in place. The two programs will create, that is both the program is administered by my department and through the Public Service Commission. Let's see. Yeah, the total of 700 jobs will be created for that figure. Okay. And we have responsibility for the Cooperative Employment Program and the Nova Scotia Employment Program for students. So through those two programs, a number of 700 jobs will be created.
Minister, the Honourable Member from Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, you indicated that out of the funding envelope of 1.685, that the funding for the public service positions was coming out of that. Has that always been the case?
Thank you, member. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, I will undertake to get a definitive answer, but I can. I'm quite certain that the amount of 1.685 million is for the program which we administer, and the Public Service Commission's program is a separate figure. But I will confirm that and provide the number to the honourable member.
Thank you, Minister. The Honourable Member from Richmond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had assumed they were separate figures. It's when a minister answered before, he said he thought they were under the same envelope, which is why I was a bit surprised to hear that, and was curious if that was reducing the amount of funding that was available for the employment program, the traditional program. So I am hoping they are two separate figures and that it's not from the same envelope. And I'll wait for the minister to provide that. Minister, one of the concerns that I've raised, and I know that the now Minister of Economic Development, prior to his ascension to Cabinet, had raised the issue that under the current program, elected officials, elected members of this House, caucus offices, and party offices are disqualified from applying under this program. As you know very well yourself, as to the amount of funding you're given to run your constituency offices, it's extremely difficult out of those funds to have the amount of funding available to hire one or more students during the summer. Yet, I think we're all committed to the fact that we want to see more young people involved in the political process, and I think the days of asking our youth just to blow up balloons, wave banners, and make noise at rallies are gone, and it's time for us to allow them to be on the front lines, see how the political process works, and have a better appreciation of how government works here in this province. So I'm curious, has there been any efforts on your part as the Minister of Education now responsible for this program, or has there been any representations made to you by members of your own caucus to review this and to see whether that funding would be made available or that elected officials would be permitted to apply under this program to have students working in our constituency offices or caucus office for that matter?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
I want to thank the honourable member for that suggestion, and I certainly don't in any way disagree with the objective that the honourable member would like to achieve. Perhaps reasons for members not being able to qualify for this funding in the past, perhaps it's appropriate for those reasons to be reviewed. I can say that it is not a matter that to this point in time I have spent any amount of time considering. I will take it under advisement and have a look at it. It's an interesting suggestion, and I will take it under advisement and look at it. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister. The Honourable Member from Richmond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm pleased to hear those comments from the Minister. And this is the first time he has the program, so I can't go on at length about having raised this issue 4 years in a row on this, because it is the first time with his program, but certainly it was raised with his predecessors each year, asking that they at least undertake a review of this. And as I said, the current Minister of Economic Development, I know before his ascension to Cabinet, had agreed that this was something that should be pursued, and I believe even the member from Kings North during a late debate one night had also agreed that this was something that should be looked at, which is why I was looking forward to the new Minister of Economic Development having the program based on the fact that he had said he supported it, and only to find out during estimates that he no longer had the program and it was sent over to the Department of Education. But I would certainly encourage the Minister and maybe even work through the Office of the Speaker to see. It is my understanding that there used to be here in Province House, and maybe the Minister remembers from his previous stint here in the House, that there used to be some sort of a program where MLAs could employ students and ministers could employ students, I believe, through the Speaker's office, again, to give them first-hand experience of what the political process looks like, how government operates, and how serving your constituents operates also. So I'm curious. I'm not sure at what stage we are in the application process or in the decision-making time for his department under this program. Is it possible for the Minister to look at bringing in those types of changes this year before that program, before the funding and the decisions are made on that program, or is it too late for any sort of review to be undertaken on that matter?
Thank you, Member, for that question. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the honourable member for his question. Very difficult to effect a change at this stage because application deadlines have been posted and applications have been received. The amount of the budget is as presented, so it is highly unlikely that we will be finding additional funds. Nevertheless, I will, as I committed to do, ask the administrators of the program to have a look at it, and I would certainly be interested to hear the views of other members of the House with respect to the suggestion made by the honourable member. I have quite honestly have not spent enough time considering the matter to indicate to him whether it is something that I feel is appropriate or not at this juncture. The honourable member might be interested to know relative to his desire to have youth more involved in the political process that both myself and the Speaker of the House are sponsoring a model parliament that will take place here in the weekend of the 24th of May, and it will involve students from all across the province. And the intent of the program is to familiarize those students with the workings of the legislature, with issues relative to government, provide them with an opportunity to debate, to experience the procedures of the House, to also become familiar with all of the processes, political and administrative, that lead to the operation and functioning of the legislature as we know it. The honourable member made reference to my time previously, suggesting that there might have been a program that allowed us to hire people. I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, when I was here previously, we did not have any provisions for staff, period. There were no constituency assistants. There wasn't a constituency office. The amount of expenses that we received, other than the tax-free allowance, when I arrived here, was an amount of $50 for franking privileges, and that was the only amount of money that was made available to members of the House at that particular time. And so the program to which he's referring must have occurred sometime after I had been here previously, because at that time there wasn't anything I recall that I hired out of my own pocket. The secretary to the school in which I was employed to do some stenographic work on my behalf, and I can remember the amount that I was able to pay her was not very significant in those times. Now, I also just want to let the honourable member perhaps understand my appreciation for his desire to have more people become involved in the political process. In my career in education, organized quite a number of model parliaments. Started for the first time in the Canso High School, and I believe the year was 1967 that we started that model parliament, and that had several of them at Canso High School. I again became involved in conducting model parliaments at the school in Calgary where I was employed, and we had a Canadian Studies course at the grade 10 level, and we concluded all of there were over 1,700 students in that school, so you can appreciate the number of grade 10 social studies classes that there were. But we concluded every session, or every semester, I should say, of our Canadian Studies course with a 2-week model parliament that involved all of the students in that program, and a wide variety of issues were debated that were related to the course of studies, and issues that were researched by students throughout the year. And I was told 20 years after I had left that school that the program was still in effect. I can't say if it's still operating today. And I had also some experience in organizing model parliaments at the Dr. John Hugh Gillis School in Antigonish, and the former Speaker of this House was very kind to us. Mr. Arthur Donoghue used to come down annually and act as our Lieutenant Governor, or Governor General, since we fashioned it after the Parliament of Canada, but he acted as the Governor General and then stayed on for the remainder of the first morning of the Model Parliament to instruct students on procedure. So I very much appreciate where the honourable member is coming from with respect to involving students in the process, because it is very important. It's important for them to understand the political process, important for them to take an interest in the issues of the day and to spend time formulating a position with respect to those issues, and then having an opportunity to get involved in a debate and discussion relative to those positions. So again, I want to thank the honourable member for bringing this suggestion forward. It is finding ways to involve more people in the affairs of the province and political affairs generally, I think is very important, and is something perhaps all of us could dedicate ourselves to perhaps in a more effective manner than we currently do. But I will, as I indicated, take your suggestion under advisement and ask people to have a good look at it.
The member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. And my initial reaction when the minister referred to his franking allowance and that when he was in the House at the first time was to tell him, well, things were different back then. It only cost 2 cents for a stamp back then, but I didn't want to make any suggestion to his age or when he sat here some time ago. But the fact is, Mr. Chair, it's we're sending mixed messages as elected officials, and the government's sending mixed message, because by telling MLAs you can't apply under this program to hire a student because you're an elected official and there's a political aspect to it, it's sending a mixed message to tell us that, yet at the same time say we should encourage young people to get more involved in the political system. So that's my big concern, that unless we're prepared to bring them on the front lines, show them exactly what it is to be an elected official, what it is to be a constituency representative, what it is to take care of everyday problems for the people we represent, they will not truly have an appreciation of the work that we do. And I certainly hope the minister will undertake to bring about those changes and maybe look with the Speaker's office at some of the programs previously offered here in the House to elected members. I'm pleased to hear his comments about the model parliaments. That is another issue that, again, being it's his first time around education, I can't chastise him for not having acted on it, because it's the first time I get to raise it with him. But I've been raising this ever since I've been elected, about the need for the province and for this legislature to take the lead role in initiating model parliaments throughout the high schools and throughout the schools of this province. We all know that our teachers, our support staff at our schools are exhausted. They're tapped out with what they're doing right now. This is an example of where both to the Speaker's office, the Office of Legislative Counsel, and to the House of Assembly itself, we could be providing a form of leadership in drafting legislation, preparing the orders of the day, and putting together a format that makes it easy for high schools to initiate these model parliaments, and that we would see this House taking a lead role in that rather than leaving it to the high schools themselves to come up with this. It is a lot of work to run a model parliament. I can tell you I had the privilege of sitting in 2 model parliaments during my high school days that were organized by the late Roy Boudreau, who the Minister of Education may be familiar with. Roy was a strong advocate of model parliaments, and unfortunately he passed away last year. And with his passing, unfortunately the program has come to an end, and we're certainly hoping to be able to revive that. And I had the privilege of sitting as a backbencher in government and model parliament, and also had the privilege of being Deputy Prime Minister and the Federal Minister of Fisheries. So it was quite an interesting high school experience, to say the least. But I certainly have no disputes as to the value of the model parliaments, and I believe his department, the Office of the Speaker and the Office of Legislative Counsel can all three work together with all of us as elected officials in putting together a model parliament program for all of our high schools to use, which we can all participate in and certainly support in our own areas. And I would encourage the minister lead that effort, and I'm pleased to see that there is going to be a model parliament May 24th. I'm assuming that the minister is now telling this House that he'll be sitting here in Halifax and not on the campaign trail on May 24th, so that's an interesting bit of information for members of this House who might be wondering what they'll be doing on that particular date. And I can tell the minister that I actually 2 years ago had the privilege of being the speaker of the International Francophonie Youth Parliament, which took place in Quebec, which was represented by 48 countries that had 2 students, the ages of 14 to 16, from 48 different French-speaking countries. So it was a great experience. My understanding is that the second international model parliament is taking place, I believe, in Nigeria this coming fall. So only time will tell, I guess, whether I have the fortune of being able to attend the second one. Mr. Chair, a few questions. My time is running out. I just want to go back and, Minister, you've probably heard me speak in this House before. The issue of post-secondary education and the impact of tuition increases and student loans have on students is near and dear to my heart. And I can certainly speak from experience, having graduated after 6 years of university, owing $35,000. I certainly can appreciate what the students are facing today. And I can tell you from practical experience, anyone who's wondering what sort of impact that is, I can tell you that today I pay more for my student loans than I pay for the mortgage on my house. So that can give you a bit of a better idea of what our students face today. I've already given the example in this House of a young couple from Richmond County, both graduates of St. FX. Both graduated with teaching degrees, which I'm sure the Minister of Tourism is familiar with. And right now, with their combined student loans, they are paying $1,200 a month on student loans. Now, Mr. Minister, that is just simply unacceptable. It is not sustainable to ask a young couple to be paying that much. I'm sure the Minister will agree that $1,200 is a mortgage payment on a very nice home, to say the least. And yet, this couple is currently renting a home. They need to sustain 2 vehicles because they work at different schools, and they have a $1,200 monthly payment on their student loans. It is not sustainable. These are the individuals we expect to be leading our economy. These are the ones we expect to be going out and growing our economy, having children, making for a better tomorrow. You can't do that when you're paying $1,200 a month at the age of 25, which is basically what they are. They're 24 and 25 years old, and they're paying $1,200 a month. That's going away to the bank, and it's not going into our local economy. That is the reality, Mr. Minister. But I wanted to go into, again, your Premier was fond of it today, so I'll go back to it. Your Blue Book on page 26, it says during its first mandate, a PC government will improve post-secondary education by, number 1, establishing a provincial income tax relief program for graduating students with high debt loads, allowing students to redirect a portion of their provincial tax payment to retire a maximum of 30% of the value of their original debt load. And I'm wondering if the Minister could indicate to us what the status of that commitment is.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
I want to thank the honourable member for the question, and that particular commitment was one that was indeed analyzed by the Department of Finance, and it was found to be a commitment that was not practical in terms of the feasibility of implementing it, and for that reason we formulated the debt reduction program, which we have recently come forward with. And as I indicated earlier today, that debt reduction program will allow students to reduce their total debt by in excess of 40% upon graduation from programs within the province. If I could, Mr. Speaker, rather than waiting to table the additional information at another time, I could let the honourable member know that the provincial employment program, as administered by the Department of Education, I indicated would create approximately 700 jobs the precise number is 695 at 1.685 million. There is still within the Office of Economic Development a program that will create 124 jobs and that is funded to the tune of $215,000. And other government departments will create 800 jobs, and that is funded to the amount of $1.575 million. So that's a total job creation of 1,619 jobs, and the funding for that is $3.475 million.
The member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the Minister's answer on the issue of tax relief, but I'm sure he'll appreciate that the commitment made in the Blue Book was for tax relief on top of the loan remission program. Instead, what you've come with your answer today is saying, well, we couldn't do the tax relief, so we've blended it into the loan remission program. Well, that wasn't the commitment that was made. The commitment was this tax relief will be on top of the loan remission program that is there already. And I know that many students were waiting to see what sort of tax relief would be provided to them. And I would again remind you that this tax relief would be for students that are out there right now that have graduated. I'm sure the Minister will be well aware that his loan remission program is of no use to me or to all of the other graduates who are paying student loans that have now finished their studies. That's where the tax relief could have helped, and it's certainly not going to help now when the Minister says that that commitment has been abandoned and that they're now referring instead on the loan remission program, which again is meant to benefit students entering the university system next year, not those who are currently in it right now. Again, on page 26, it says that your government in its first mandate will establish a university student employment program similar to that offered by Memorial University of Newfoundland, which provides university students with part-time campus work in such areas as research and accounting, providing practical on-the-job skills and help students pay for their education. And I wonder if the Minister could indicate to us what the status of that commitment is.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, I'd have to admit to not paying as close attention as I should have been to the honourable member's question. I wonder if I could ask him to repeat the question again. Thank you.
Order, please. It may also be helpful if the conversations were taken outside of the chamber, please. The member for Richmond has the floor.
Well, Mr. Chair, I do have to tell you that I get a real big kick out of each time a member of government doesn't realize or doesn't recall stuff that's in their own Blue Book that they campaigned on. I know the Premier's had a few bouts of amnesia, and I always find it amusing to see just how committed they are to this. But I'll read it for the Minister again, page 26 of the Blue Book, where it says during its first mandate, the PC government will improve post-secondary education by establishing a university student employment program similar to that offered by Memorial University of Newfoundland. My question to the Minister is, could you indicate what the status of that commitment is today?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank the honourable member, and as I indicated to the honourable member previously, we have in fact through the provincial employment program created a total of 1,619 jobs, or will be in this current fiscal year, and that program is funded to the amount of $3.475 million.
The member for Richmond.
Mr. Chair, I may be making some assumptions that are incorrect, but I think it's safe to say that in the books that the Minister and his staff have there, a copy of the Blue Book is not one of them. Because clearly the program being referred to as a university student employment program has nothing to do with the current program that exists. This was a special program to be done in conjunction with universities. Clearly the answer is nothing has been done on this. And again, we know how quickly we are into the first mandate 4 years later. Again, Minister, it says on page 27 this time of your Blue Book as to what you will do during your first mandate for post-secondary education, that you will be creating a comprehensive job search and support program for students who have successfully completed affiliated university are nearing the end of their interest-free loan payment period and have not yet found work. And I'm curious if the minister could indicate to us what the status of that commitment is today.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
I want to thank the honourable member for that question. Mr. Chairman, there is more information available on that than I have with me at the moment, and I will undertake to provide the honourable member with a complete answer to that question.
Member for Richmond.
Can the minister indicate whether that program is currently in practice or has been developed?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, I will undertake to provide a complete answer to the honourable member.
The member for Richmond.
Well, Mr. Chair, I can save the minister the time. I can tell you that nothing has been done on that, and the program does not currently exist for students. So that's at least 3 of the commitments during the first mandate, which are nowhere near being put in place. Let's go to a couple more for the time I have remaining. Let me see. We have here urging the federal government to change the regulations that discourage students from part-time work by forcing them to remit 80% of every dollar earned after the first $800. Could the minister indicate what the status of that commitment is?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can indicate that we have in fact altered that requirement. We don't require students to dedicate as much of their earnings to their education as previously had been the case, and that has been a significant adjustment.
The member for Richmond.
Well, Mr. Chair, the fact the minister can't tell us what the figures are, what the percentage is, or how much money they're able to earn, I think makes it quite clear that the answer here is say we've done something, because stop making him list off stuff we've done nothing about. Speaker, in the limited time I have left, I simply want to finish by saying that I am very concerned, and maybe it's because of politics, maybe it's being a good team player, that the minister has given the answers he has given regarding the Strait Regional School Board. But it does disturb me, and I do hope that personally that the minister does not feel that the situation in the Strait is comparable to the situation of boards throughout the rest of the province. As serious as they might be in the Cape Breton Victoria Board, they are certainly extremely serious in the Strait Board. 16 more cuts to teaching positions is of a tremendous concern to us, and it's unfortunate the minister will not make the commitment to maintaining that and to make sure that that does not happen. We are in a crisis situation in the Strait. It is not going to get better if we continue to lose teachers, and while distance education has provided benefit to numerous students, at the end of the day, it is not a replacement for the traditional methods of having a teacher in the class providing education to the students on a daily basis. And I would urge you to deal with the situation in the Strait as a crisis situation which needs to be immediately attended to.
Order, please. Order, please. Members' time has expired. The chair recognizes the member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't have a great deal of time before the moment of interruption, but in the brief period of time I have, I want to start by asking the minister a few questions about the implementation of the Black Learners Advisory Committee report, the Black Report. What I'd like to know is how many of the recommendations from the Black report have been fulfilled, how many of the recommendations are in progress, and how many require planning and action because they have not been undertaken at the stage.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the honourable member for the question. We've completed a review of what remains to be done. I've looked at the financial impact and how best to proceed with respect to that. We are committed to full implementation. This year we will focus on direct support to public school students by funding 10 student support worker positions. We will provide additional resources to school boards to ensure each has a coordinator to implement the new racial equity policy and to increase cross-cultural understanding and greater awareness of human rights. Now, there are numbers associated with this, Mr. Chairman. I can say that $300,000 has been allocated in 0304 for targeted funding for student support workers, $150,000 for RCI staffing and professional development, and there is $100,000 in the department budget for the implementation of the racial equity policy, which was released in May of 2002. So, Mr. Chairman, those are the commitments to date, but I do want to underline the fact that we are committed to the full implementation of the report.
Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the minister. I think that, you know, governments have, your government and the previous government have both been committed and have stated their commitment to implementing the recommendations of the Black Report. But I'm trying to establish how far away we are actually from actually implementing those recommendations. And you know, I ask this in all seriousness and out of concern. I have a very large African Nova Scotian constituency inside my constituency. I sometimes despair when I go to high school graduations in particular, and I see the small number of youth from my constituency graduating. I can go into elementary schools in my constituency and see lots of young African Nova Scotian children, and they get lost between the elementary grades and the high school grades. It's an issue I've consistently raised here with ministers of education, and I raise it with the school board for my area. And when I talk to organizations like Black Educators or CASE, they indicate that the foundation on which we need to build education for African Nova Scotian children and youth is the Black Report, and that if there's anything that myself as an elected person can do is to come here to the House and give voice to their concerns that recommendations have a long way to go in terms of being fulfilled. So I guess I want to ask the minister again, and I won't repeat this over and over again, but I would like to know how many recommendations have actually been completed and fulfilled, and how many are in progress, and how many require planning and action. And if the minister doesn't have that information at his fingertips, would he be prepared to make it available in a reasonable period of time so that we can, you know, I can share that information with people in my constituency and elsewhere as well who are very concerned about these issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Order, please. Order, please. The time has come for the committee to recess as we approach the moment of interruption. The member for Colchester Musquodoboit Valley perhaps could take the chair. As Deputy Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Honourable the Member for Fairview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise today to debate the strike that's currently ongoing at the Regional Residential Services Society. And Mr. Speaker, what I'd like to start by saying is that Stephen wants to go home, which is odd considering that Stephen's living with his parents. But he's living with his parents for the first time in 10 years because Stephen is 36 years old, he's mentally challenged, He has a seizure disorder, and he's a resident of one of the Society's homes here in Halifax. It's one of the homes that has had to close because of the strike. One of the residents has gone back to his family in Newfoundland. Another one has gone back to his family in Chesapeake. And Stephen has gone back to his family in my constituency. I haven't spoken to Stephen, but today, earlier this afternoon, I spoke to his mother. His mother wants me to know what's happening to Stephen. And when I asked her the impact on the family of having their son back for the first time in 10 years, she wouldn't talk about the burden on her or her husband. She talked about Stephen. Stephen is finding the situation upsetting, more and more upsetting every day. He's more and more restless every day. He wants to know, when can he go home? Because even though today he's living with his mother and father, home is the group home in which he lives in Halifax. That's where his friends are, his mother told me. And his friends are what he calls both the other residents of the home and the workers in the home that are on strike. And I asked Stephen's mother today if you could stand up in the legislature